Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Malikicowtipper going to bring you another game of StarCraft 2. I wonder if I should make my voice sound a little bit more, enthusiastic, kind of more like this, where you talk really loud and you're kind of happy, but that's not why you guys are watching me. So, today, my opponent is Deathbybagel. Very interesting name, and our map will be on Cloud Kingdom. So, if you guys have been watching my videos, you know that I do not keep any maps unfavorited, or maps that I choose not to play. Or, I haven't even looked to see if that's a feature in Season 7, not Caesar 7. It was back in Season 1 where you could, tell the game, hey, I think these maps are pretty neat, and I think these maps are not so neat. And I'm purposely not doing that. That way I can kind of get a taste of all the maps, but I have to say that this is one map that I'm not particularly fond of, and I think it's simply because of how wide open the front is right here, and some people would say, well, that's good for battles and stuff. The battles usually don't take place there. They usually take place in chokes here, here, places like that, and just in general, your expansions are so far out each other, and there's just so many wide open areas that I think if I were to take off one map, it would be this, and then, I think it's Titan Station. I'm just really not a fan of that particular map. I understand that you can get a good Pocket 3 expansion, but going for your 4th expansion is very difficult, and in long macro games, I find that's a map that just I'm not happy to be a Zerg on, but anyway. I'm Malikicowtipper. I'm spawning as the red Zerg in the lower position of Cloud Kingdom, and Deathbybagel spawning as the blue Protoss in the upper position. So we'll go ahead and bring up all the usual goodies that I'm sure you guys are just dying to see on the game, and when it comes to something like this, I've almost started exclusively fast expanding against Protoss, even if I see them doing something like this, especially if I hear my audio being way out of control. There we go. Really need to get better at that. Anyways, so I particularly do that just because I lost my train of thought. So Protoss going gateway first. Usually when you see gateway first like this, I'm going to backtrack, and then in a simulator afterwards, it typically means some type of faster 4-gate push. And even under those type of circumstances, I feel like if I do not fast expand, one thing will happen is the push will come. As a one-base Zerg, you simply cannot stand, or it's very, very difficult to stand against a properly timed 4-gate that can come at like the 5:30, 6-minute mark. It's just very, very difficult, and at that point, if you don't go expand first, you're going to get caught with this expansion barely half finished and not being able to reap any of the benefits of it. At least this way, you know that if he's going for this build, for about the first 5 minutes of the game, unless he decides to pull some type of sneaky pressure, which usually they do not, because they just do not have the money to fund it, you're pretty much free just to drone and macro up and go for whatever plan of defense you feel is best against your particular Protoss. And as we can see right here, the Cyber Core is finishing. He is chrono boosting out that first Zealot as he knows that it needs it to block the wall there, because he is very vulnerable during the first, couple minutes of this to Zerg lane run by. Even a possible Bang lane bust, if you were quick enough at it, could be very, very effective against the Protoss in this particular manner. The income tab shows that it's favoring the Protoss, and the reason for that is he's able to chrono boost out probes and continue to build probes while he's doing all this. And we can see now that Warp Gate is being chrono boosted, so normally that takes 160 seconds, but when you're dropping chrono boost on it, you can see that it's 50% faster for 20 seconds. So if you have enough chrono boost, you can have this done in just over a minute, actual gameplay time. Well, not actual gameplay time, about, whatever. I'm not good at math. So the point of that is it can come very, very fast. In his case, probably around the 6-minute mark. Excellent place. Drop a pylon somewhere over here. Then you can warp in units right here in the choke. Makes it very difficult for Zerg to surround them. And then just push right on up into the base. And when it comes to that, you realistically need to have your defense ready. You need to know when the attack is coming. Otherwise, he'll go Nexus first. And to finish my sentence there, if you decide to macro just a little too heavy and build one too many waves of drones, the game's basically over for you at that point unless you have 3 or 4 spine crawlers, because his army's already in mass and it usually has zealots in the front and then it has stalkers in the back. And I can't hear anything. Yeah, that's correct. Turn the headset up a little bit. There we go. So this is actually very interesting to see him go for basically the build of a 4-gate and then drop into an expand. I understand that he's walling this off with gateways, and maybe that's part of his idea, is that I'll have this ready and I can push out whenever I want to. But realistically, because of the mineral dump that he has for this Nexus right here, and the fact that he doesn't have probes to transfer over to it right away, it's just going to make this attack come a little bit slower and possibly not as strong as it normally would. We can see he's just now starting to get sentries in off of his 1 gas, and he's spending that gas pretty much the second that he gets it. And Chrono Boost now going down to get more probes out. So the income tab is right now favoring me by 2 harvesters, because I've spent this entire time just droning, and realistically I'm sending some lings up at his base because I need to know the status of this attack, and realistically these lings should have been up there a good minute ago because I'm actually really far behind. And I can see right here that the warp gates are up, and I do have an idea of the units that he has, and I see that he only has a couple stalkers and a zealot, so I figure if he's going to do a 4-gate, I've got about a minute to a minute and a half before it's going to be knocking at my front door, because he's not going to push up with that few units. He very well could build a proxy pile and then start reinforcing up here, but for me, I have 2 evolution chambers going down to kind of help funnel his units, so... And actually, that's not necessarily a good thing if you're trying to engage with Zerglings, but then the idea is you put a Spine Crawler here, you put a Spine Crawler here, Spine Crawler here, and you kind of force him into here with some Roaches or Hydras back here, and then if they push through, that's when your Zerglings go forward. That's ideally how this is supposed to go, and we'll see what's going to happen as far as that goes in the game. You can see I have a Hydra nest down, and the reason I've done that is, to me, it actually seems like Hydras do extremely well against these type of early pushes. Now, it's not always possible to have Hydras out, depending on how fast the push goes, which you can either rely on Ling Roach, which does quite well, or Mass Ling, which you have to be careful, because it's very easy to counter Mass Ling with Mass, Zealot. And this is actually kind of interesting, because I love this play. He sends out this hallucinogen of the Phoenix, and it's going to come through here, and I'm not going to pay attention to it. So, well, not that. I'm going to take notice of it, and I'm going to say, shit, that's why he didn't have any units. He went for starports. And we check this out. You can always tell if it's a hallucination, because they don't do any damage to your units. And if we go back and take a look at the production tab right here, I am now getting 2 spore crawlers, Yep, 2 spore crawlers, possibly even a 3rd one coming soon, simply because that attack kind of spooked me, and I'm like, shit, Stargate. So, you can see that I'm maintaining map control. He has a relatively small force back here, and I guess as far as this goes, I can't really say that I'm a big fan of what I see out of this build so far, because he doesn't have enough troops to push out for a strong attack, because he went for this Nexus, and he populated it with workers, and deciding to go basically the build of a 4-gate, and then expanding just, you know, I understand that you can probably defend your expansion better that way, but not when you're building your gateways outside. And he's actually going for a very fast 3rd Nexus, so I feel like we have a macro Protoss on our hands here. This is kind of interesting, going back and watching this replay. So I do have a designated pooper, and she is going to be getting me lots of creep for lots of vision. We can see that I'm doing level 1 missile attack, and I'm doing level 1 ground attack, and actually, realistically, I'm going to build so few missile units this game that I probably should have canceled that and instantly started to transition to level 1 ground attack, because that's just not going to... I'm going to build very few missile units, but the idea is that if you need to, you can fall back on having some upgrades for your Roaches and Hydras if you hit a lot of play from Zealots and Stalkers. But as soon as he transitions into Colossi, those units, you start to use less and less of them, and you'll probably transition into something like Infestor Broodlord, maybe Roach Broodlord. Ling Broodlord Infestor is my favorite combination, just because there's so many units on the ground that they preoccupy the Stalkers, and as long as you have Corruptors in the air, Colossus basically just have to fall back. They can't really do much if there's 5 or 6 Corruptors there, because they take so much damage from them. If we check this out, he is going to secure that 3rd, but by Ling pressure that I was able to put on him, more than likely will keep him from populating it for a little while. Just, you know, kind of scare him a little bit. And I do have map vision on both the Xel'Nagas, so I'll know if he's pushing out. We check out the army tab right here. We can see that his army is a little bit larger than mine, and his food supply is actually quite a bit higher than mine. And I guess the one benefit I have going to me is I have a little bit of a higher worker count than he does. So if he were to push out right now with the units that he has, 10 Stalkers, 10 Zealots, 9 Stalkers, and 5 Sentries, versus what I have on the field right now, unless I see it coming, it would be very, very difficult for me to deal with it. And let's just see here, am I banking any larvae? I have 5 larvae there. Yep, I am saving up enough larvae where if I needed to, I could quickly muster together some type of army, but my army composition is going to be very quickly null and void because of just how deadly Colossus can be against Zerg ground troops. You get 3 or 4 of them there and they just start melting everything. Very, very scary stuff, but we can see I've got a Changeling all up in his base, and I can see here, got a good idea of what his army looks like, but Ah, Sentry, no. That's so gross. Those guys are so weird. But I did get an idea of what he has as far as an army is concerned, and that will make me feel very happy about having laid this Spire down. So I feel cool about that, because now I can get lots of Corruptors, I have Infestors with their Pathogen Glands on the way, and I'm starting to feel very, very good about my army composition, knowing that he only has one Colossus on the field. Even if I need to, you know, kind of micro around my army and be careful with it, I can freeze his Zealots and his Stalkers in place, keep him from blinking, and as he tries to pull back his army, keep him at a distance, and to keep his Colossus at a distance, I can move in and kind of take out the attack right there. Now, what I really need to do, because we're both in 3 base, is I need to heavily consider taking a 4th base, possibly even a 5th base, with some of the money that I have, just because I can only pour it into units for so long. We can see that he actually has a food advantage over me. If we check out the income right now, he's up 64 to my 57 Harvesters, and you just do not want a Protoss being able to outproduce you, because this army will come back very, very quickly, especially if it's mainly gateway units. The one thing that I can be happy about is he just does not seem to have a lot of production facilities, and that's probably because he's just spent so much time getting his economy underway that he hasn't had the money to. Doing a very, very good job at spending his money. Let's just check this out right here. You can see that neither of us are running terribly high APMs, just because there's not too much going on in our particular games right there, although other people, like Koreans and stuff like that, definitely maintain that, but that's not me. So this lone Stalker is going to check this base out, and my Lings are going to be like, hey bro, don't do that. And Zerglings just being incredibly cost-effective against Stalkers when they're out in the open, on their own. Nothing that poor Stalker could do. And let's keep it back to the production tab right here. We check this out. I'm transitioning into melee upgrades and getting ground carapace. We can see that he's getting ground armor level 1. He has another Colossus on the way, and he has ground attack level 1. So as far as our upgrades are concerned, we're going to be about dead even on upgrades. Although I'll have 2/2 armor pretty soon, which is pretty neat, I guess. And he's actually going to take a 4th base. This is just crazy, crazy, crazy Protoss. My creep sped is over the halfway mark on the map, and this is kind of what you want as a Zerg, because this is going to make your Protoss very leery about coming in to attack you. God, that's cool. So shiny. It's because he's going to want to stop and take all that time to kill the creep, and you know exactly where he is. And my queen, she's over here. Needs to get the hell away from there, otherwise she's going to die. But if we take a look at my army right here, I am morphing in my Broodlords. Blink is not quite yet finished. There's an Observer on the way. So for units right now in the game, I have 6 Broodlords, 3 Corruptors, 10 Hydralisks, and 108 Zerglings. Holy crap, that is a lot of Zerglings, folks. And realistically, this ball right here is actually fairly Zergling friendly. We check this out. There's less than a dozen Zealots in there, and even though there are 5 Colossus, if I can range them down with the Broodlords and get some Corruptors in there, the Colossus just are not going to be very effective, and the bulk of his army is comprised of Stalkers. They will get torn apart by my Lings, which will have better upgrades than his, which is kind of neat, actually. Have I gotten? Nope, I have not gotten Adrenal Glands yet, which is really too bad. But if we check this out right here, I'm able to get a better part of my Lings wrapped in around of his army. They are all clumped up, which is actually pretty good because it reduces the surface area and makes it a lot harder for my troops to get in there and to do any damage. My Corruptors, they're not really in force, so they're not going to be able to do a lot of damage against these Stalkers. My Infestors, I could use to fungal these a bit for the extra DPS and then drop a bunch of Infested Terran just to make more food. More food for these guys to kill. The Hydralisks, as long as they're not taking too much Colossus fire, will do a lot of damage against, the Stalkers. And the Broodlords, they're just awesome. So let's watch and see what happens. We can see here, Force Field's going down, and the Zerglings just getting absolutely roasted. Infested Terran coming, a lot of Infested Terran coming down on the backside, and that's actually going to be enough to push him away. And we check that out, even at the end of all that, there's still a lot of the Hydralisks left alive. Realistically, all I really lost there was a bunch of Zerglings. And for my opponent, his Stalker count has been cut in half. He lost 2 of his Colossus. He basically has all of his Zealots and his Sentry left. But Units Lost tab right here should show that I'm behind the Protoss by a little bit. You know, it's nothing to really brag about as far as that goes, but the important thing is I have Broodlords, and I'm morphing in more of them, and I'll be getting in, check out the production here, I'm warping in some Mutas. Well, not warping, hatching in some Mutas. I'm not quite sure why I decided Mutas would be cool, but Mutas are just awesome anyway, and I'm getting more Corruptors, so if I can get my Corruptor number up to about 8 or 9, I'll be able to reinforce my Broodlords as they die, and these Colossus are just going to be absolutely decimated. So, a lot of Zerglings on the field, running in, and these Zerglings more or less being food for the Colossus, trying to get some kills off, and There we go, the Corruptors in force, just doing so much work against most Colossus, it's not even funny, and the Broodlords driving everybody away. The Hydralisks still alive, still baller. We can see there's more Broodlords, the Mutas are on their way, food count just about dead even, units lost right now, favoring me ever so slightly more than they were before. Going back to production right now, you can see I'm getting air attack level 1, he is getting ground weapons level 1, I have my armor level 2. Let's see here, am I doing any more for these? Nope. I think at this point I'm almost completely focused on the battle. My injects, let's see here, she's keeping up on both those hatcheries. Yeah, I really need to get better at my injects, folks. You can see there's a lot of wasted energy there as far as that's concerned. Now, this expansion never really got a chance to go up, and we can see right here that he has a lot of unspent money, and that's primarily because he just does not have enough production facilities to make what he needs. And we check out the bulk of his army right here. Go back into the units tab right here. So now I'm up to 7 Broodlords, 5 Zerglings, 12 Corruptors, and 5 Infestors. So, to that end, my ground troops are relatively weak, so I'm primarily relying on my Broodlords, actually, to act as a buffer against themselves as a Stalkers. I would like to have some Zerglings on the ground just to kind of slow the advance of that, but this is a great position for me to actually attack in right here as he's coming up the hill. My Hydralisks in the front, they are going to just be absolutely destroyed by the Colossus, but a fungal growth here forces him to keep his troops in, fight a battle that he might not necessarily have wanted to. Zerglings reinforcing, coming in, and the Colossus just absolutely getting destroyed, and this is what I'm talking about right here. The Corruptors easily take care of all of the Colossus, and basically meaning that at that point, if the Stalkers want to shoot at the Corruptors, whatever, they have a lot of armor and they have a lot of HP, let him do that. We can see that his Ball of Death is just, every time he attacks is being slowly reduced. My number of Broodlords is now at 9, so the biggest thing when you're doing these type of battles is it doesn't matter how many Zerglings you throw away. You really do want to try to keep your Infestors alive because they're quite expensive, but the biggest thing is keeping these Broodlords alive. You want your Broodlords to stay alive, and in this case, he doesn't even have a starport out, so he really has nothing that he can do to properly counter this type of army right here. He can get as many Stalkers as he wants, but between all of my Lings and go back over to the production tab right here. There we go, level 2 and level 3 and level 1 just about to finish right now. Going to be so cool. There's just not much that these Stalkers are going to be able to do against all these Broodlords. They just generate so many Broodlings that the Stalkers almost can't even advance. The Zerglings coming in, they're going to be absolute Colossus food, but that doesn't matter, because there are so many Corruptors that Colossus didn't even know it hit it. And right here we can see that between the Lings and the Broodlings, oh my god, it's just an absolute slaughter. The Stalkers don't even know what they're trying to do. And did I lose some Broodlords during that engagement? Yes, I lost 3 Broodlords, but he lost his entire army, and I basically have everything left. These poor Zealots, they're not even going to get to see the light of day. Oh, they will, never mind, but again, when there's so many units like this, it's just difficult for the Protoss army to deal with. And Deathbybagel will GG out and leave the game. So if I had to analyze this game critically, I would say a couple things. One, he did not do a decent job at effectively managing, my creep spread. He did kill it whenever he came in, but I was basically in control of the game the entire time. He fought almost every single battle on my terms of engagement. I feel like his build order was a little bit messed up as far as it goes, and the reason I say that is it was kind of like, well, I think I'll do this, but then I'll do this instead, and I'll get these units, but I'm just going to get enough to expand out and try to play a macro game against a Zerg player, and there's nothing wrong with a Protoss doing that. It can be very, very deadly, but this was a 23-minute game, and at the end of the game, he lost to Mass Broodlord Infestor Corruptor with Lings for support. We check this out. I was significantly more efficient with my creature use than he was. I mean, I haven't even lost 10,000 resources total. He's lost 21,000, so in that sense, by taking so long to get up and running, he was stuck with basically the absolute worst combination of units to deal with what I was about to throw at him, and that's just really not the place that you want to be as a Protoss player up against this with a death ball of Stalkers and Colossus, especially when there's some Infestors on the ground to do some fungal growths. So I hope you guys enjoyed the game. This was a very fun game. I'm not trying to rip on Deathbybagel at all. He's got the coolest name in the world. Thanks for watching, guys. This is Malikicowtipper signing out.